You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. Our presenting sponsor continues to be the entertainment payroll company Extreme Reach. They have the most comprehensive suite of tools and services to support all areas of media and content creation, from tax incentive support to accounting software and payroll services. If you are creating content, you need them. Call them and tell them I sent you. This is my month for playwrights, and today I have another very special episode with playwright Laura Maria Censabella. She wrote the play Paradise, which was commissioned by Ensemble Studio Theater and the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation. And lucky for us, the West Coast premiere of Paradise, presented by Viola Davis and Julius Tennant's Juvie Productions and American Oasis, is opening in LA at the Odyssey Theater January 26th at 8 p.m. and running through February 17th. You can get tickets at plays411.com/paradise, and there's a link to it on my website. Laura is an award-winning playwright, a Daytime Emmy-winning screenwriter, and teaches playwriting and new play development at the New School for Drama, where she has been honored with the distinguished University-wide Teaching Award. She graduated from Yale University and is currently writing the screenplay for Paradise. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. And you can also listen on Apple Podcasts and all the podcast places. If you haven't already, check out the Kiss My Age show, which is where women of a certain vintage, grown-ups, talk about anything and everything, all the things that matter. It's hosted by Lasta Drakovic, Karen Samuelson, and me. There is still time to get your tickets for the 2019 BRIC Summit on February 9th. You can get your tickets at bricfoundation.org, and there's a link on my website. All right, here's my conversation with Laura Maria Censabella. Have a listen. Tell me what you do.
I am a playwright. I am also a university teacher and a professor, and then I write screenplays, and I have written some television.
All of the things. Have written some television. I think you've won a couple Emmys writing television.
Yes.
Let's start there, just because that's glamorous. You wrote on As the World Turns? Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
Yes. I wrote I would say, a very exciting time for that show. They had a fabulous head writer, and we had just a great team of writers who really enjoyed each other and got off on each other's creativity. So a lot of times we'd be writing those scripts for each other, because a lot of times the actors change their lines on a soap because they have to learn so many lines.
It's so much so fast.
It's so much. So a lot of what you write doesn't actually make it on the air in terms of the quality of the writing that you're doing. So we enjoyed writing for each other as well as the audience, of course. And we pushed each other to be better. So it was a really fun time to be on that show. And I had been briefly on Another World before it was canceled. So it was still a huge learning curve. I was on As the World Turns for 2 years. And it was just tremendous to be able to write scenes with 20-something characters in them, You never get to do that in theater.
And I imagine the volume of writing for daytime. Like, how many scripts a week were you doing?
I wasn't doing, we did have people who wrote 2 scripts a week. I was on a half schedule, so I wrote every other week, which I really liked because it gave me a balance in my life. It gave me a decent income, but also some kind of balance. And if I was doing rewriting of another project, I could still keep my other projects going. It was very hard to write a first draft with that kind of schedule.
Yeah.
And when I say every other week, sometimes your weeks would be clumped up. So you'd have 3 weeks in a row, then 2 weeks off, etc. So sometimes it was hard to plan.
Now, is that in daytime? What's the male-female balance?
But the nice thing about daytime is there are a lot of female writers, but of course daytime is not much anymore. How many soaps are still on the air?
Are there 1, 2 even?
Maybe 4, Young and Restless,
General Hospital?
Old and Beautiful, General Hospital, maybe one other. Yeah, maybe one more.
Yeah.
But yes, I loved it because it was a field where women could grow.
Yeah. And how many writers are in a room there?
So you're not in the room. I was a script writer. So then you have people that are called breakdown writers. And again, this has changed now because it's contracted. The field has contracted. But when it was bigger, you'd have breakdown writers, and maybe there'd be 5 of them, and they would write the outline for each day. It has to be kind of an assembly line. So you have your head writer who's writing the Bible, then is writing a 3-month breakdown, then is writing a 6-week breakdown, and then is writing the weekly breakdown. And then the people in the room, the breakdown writers, take the weekly breakdown and write that, divided into 5 days. Then you get the outline, and then you write the script. And the thing about the soaps is you're really responsible for your script. Like, there is a script editor, but if she or he has to do too much editing on it, you're out. So it's not like...
no one's got time for that.
They don't. So it's not like other TV shows where it's just habitual, where everybody's kind of rewriting each other's work. It doesn't quite work that way.
It seems like a factory, like the train is moving.
It had to be, yeah, because the show is on 52 weeks a year.
Yeah.
So to cover the Christmas weeks, then you double up. There's double the amount of scripts because you get a week off.
Now, just going back to the time where I was glued to all my children all summer, every summer growing up, and you're always tuning in for the wedding that's going to happen on Friday, but never happens on Friday, and it probably takes 3 weeks of teasing out the wedding.
Yes.
Are those conversations in the room, like, we are going to milk this anticipation as long as we can?
Yeah, and some shows were known to be slower than others. So Days of Our Lives, I remember when I was in training, we were asked to watch Days of Our Lives, and I remember for an entire week there was a scene that they kept coming back to where a woman was just brushing her hair in front of a mirror, whereas General Hospital moves much quicker. Our show was kind of in the middle of that, because you were also trying to get people who are coming in and out of the room, and so they call it being viewer friendly in terms of repeating that exposition over and over again.
Yeah.
But you had to try to repeat the exposition with some artistry, which was
not
really
the same words
challenging.
over and over again.
Really, really challenging.
Yeah, well, it's agony to watch it because you just want to get to it. Now,
but I will say something. My grandmother and my mom are both from Italy. My mom, she came here as a teenager, so her English is pretty good. Her spelling is terrible, but her English is pretty good. But my grandmother had to work like 3 jobs, so she could never learn English properly. But she loved the soaps. And partly because of the repetition, she could get it. So non-native speakers could get it. But also, it was like a book that never finished.
Yeah.
So when I got on the show, I was like, oh, I now get the appeal. It's like these people are more real to you than sometimes the people in your own life at a certain point.
Oh, yeah.
And you're thinking about, I found myself thinking about them and their stories in the shower.
Yeah, like, what are my friends doing when I'm not watching?
Yeah, and I finally understood why my grandmother would get so worked up and so enthralled, because it was her book. She didn't read a lot of books. I mean, she was very smart, but she had to leave to become a servant in Italy at the age of 13, and she was pulled out of school, and it was really painful for her. So she didn't read a lot, but this was her literature.
It's her stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, was that your first TV job? Let's talk about, how did you get into writing in the first place?
My other TV job was for HBO. I wrote film. I had a screenplay that was optioned by Punch Productions and David Brown, and then they had a deal with HBO, so they got me on a project there, and it was a 6-film project. I wrote 1, and it was all by women. It was a little bit ahead of its time. It was before Sex and the City.
Was it If These Walls Could Talk?
No, it never aired. They never made the films. It was, it was before Sex and the City, and I think it was called Women Breaking the Rules. And it was all women doing different things that they never could have gotten away with. So now this seems passé, but at the time, one of the films was about a woman stripper, and nothing bad happened to her. She
wasn't punished for her immorality?
She wasn't punished, and she loved her life. Yeah. My piece was called Physics, and it was an adaptation of this really laugh-out-loud, hilarious first-person story of a professor at Columbia who has an affair with her 20-year-old student. And again, nothing terrible happens to her. And it's hilarious because the older person with the younger person's sex, and it was really, really fun. And the first person voice in it was so beautiful. And I felt that was the story, and I wanted to braid that through. But they said, no, this kind of first person narration will never work. And then a few years later, Sex and the City came out. Yeah. So, it was
ahead of its time.
It was ahead of its time. Yeah, and it was a woman producer, and, she just tried so hard.
Did you always know you were going to be a writer?
No. I grew up in Brooklyn and Queens where there were no writers. And if I did, I read prodigiously, but they were mostly male writers, some female writers in terms of novels, but in terms of plays, who did I know? Lillian Hellman and Lorraine Hansberry. That's it. And both seemed so different from me, I just didn't think you could. And then my first year of college, we had a collaboration class, which was at Yale, undergrad, and it was writing, acting, and directing. And we weren't taught how to do any of it. We were just told to do it. And the first thing I had success with, one of the first writing assignments was to adapt Dubliners, believe it or not. And I had a lot of success with that because I knew Catholicism and I knew a lot of Irish people growing up. So suddenly I was like the expert in the class on James Joyce and writing Catholics and that culture. And then I started writing my own culture, which was very working class, Italian American. And at Yale, this was a revelation. They were not used to...
A story that was not waspy?
Yeah, no. And I remember I had a character come out in tidy whities at the dinner table. And my professor kept saying, you don't mean that, right?
People don't do that.
Yeah, you mean like boxer shorts, right? And I didn't even know what boxer shorts were because nobody I knew wore them. So, that was really fun to create that milieu in such a different milieu. And that got me noticed there too. And so I had originally wanted to be an actor, but again, there was no training at all. We were just thrown in, and the only scenes we were allowed to act were Ben Jonson, Chekhov, Strindberg, and Ibsen. And I'm this working class girl from Queens. Wow. I wasn't ready I loved reading them, but I wasn't ready to act them. I couldn't find myself in them.
Because were you having like movement training and dialect training and all the training you need to do that work?
Yale doesn't believe in craft training at all. Maybe they do now, but they didn't then. Wow. So I just learned to write on the job. My professor was kind enough to put comments, and I would go in, because I didn't understand his comments, I would go into meetings with him, and he would explain, and I would get it, and then, be able to rewrite. And he would say, oh, you rewrite better than what I told you, in terms of what I thought, where it should go, or whatever. So, and then I got into a prose class. I left theater. It was the time I was there were a lot of really talented people, but I was told it was one of the harshest times. People were kind of mean to each other. And so I left theater and I fully focused on philosophy, which became my major. But I wound up, I didn't place into it at first. It was a prose writing class. And the professor, once he read samples and he realized everybody in the class was WASP. And he wanted some diversity of voices. So he picked me, he picked my friend Paul Butler, who's the son of the actor Paul Butler, but Paul Butler Jr. is an incredible lawyer in Washington, D.C. now. So he picked a bunch of us to diversify the class a little bit, and I wound up really thriving there. Two or three of those short stories got published, and in little tiny magazines. And one other thing I would say about writing was everything that I couldn't access as an actor, there was no wall between me and the work when I was writing.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yes.
Because I would guess that would be even more vulnerable than acting.
It is. But maybe there's something about my own body, that felt I wasn't comfortable in it or something.
Like no one's looking at you while
yeah,
you're writing?
people are looking at me. And I also would trick myself by saying no one is ever going to read this or perform it or whatever. So that would be the trick.
Yeah.
But I just remember, like, when I was acting Chekhov in Three Sisters, I could visualize Moscow, and I could visualize the snow, and I could feel what those women were feeling, and then I'd get up on stage and none of that would come through me. But when I would write, all that would come through me. So
Interesting.
yeah.
And to have the awareness of that as you're going through your education.
Yes, I mean, I remember the day I decided I'm going to stop on this acting track. And, well, there was theater track, but I'm going to not be an actress anymore because that had been my dream. And I remember thinking, am I running away from something? Am I just afraid of failure? And it was, this huge decision. And
That whole existential crisis
yes,
about it.
it was. And I do remember my boyfriend's mother said, no, I think that's actually kind of mature, to decide that's not. And I also, this should be a bigger indicator, actually, and this is what I tell my students. I didn't love being in the rehearsal room. I wanted to be back in my room writing. So
Well, that's everything, right? If you're not even enjoying it.
yeah, I mean, now as a playwright, I do like the rehearsal room, but it's different. It's a different role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then when you got out, did you focus on playwriting?
So I got out and I focused on those short stories and getting them published, and that's when I did get some of them published. And I got one of them published in a publication that I was across from James Baldwin.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
this was amazing for me.
Yeah.
He was a hero. The whole publication was heroic to me. It was published by the UN, this beautiful literary magazine. Romer Bearden did the cover illustration. Sue Coe did the back illustration. So I was very proud to be in it, and I gave out copies. In fact, I have no more copies because I gave them out. And people would come back, people I admired would say, oh, I really liked your story. But that was it. And I thought, I didn't work that hard to have people just say, I really liked your story.
Yeah.
And maybe make one other comment. And I thought, I want to be in the room when people are experiencing my story. So I wrote a play, and it was called, very sordid title, it was called Jazz Wives, Jazz Lives. And it was about, because I had lived with a jazz musician, it was about the wives of jazz musicians.
Because jazz musicians are all men?
Well, actually, I'll tell you some stories about that in a second. But and that went to the O'Neill National Playwrights Conference.
Oh my
It was my
God.
first play, and it was just very live, very bubbly. It didn't add up in any way, shape, or form, but the individual scenes were just really alive. Yeah. No, going back to jazz musicians, very famous jazz musician now who heads something that I won't say because then you'll identify who he is. But he does not put women up there because he says if there's a woman musician up there, it's all about the pussy.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. And I know this
Well-
from his ex-wife, so
At least you know where he stands.
yeah.
I don't even know what to say to that. How do you begin to unpack that? Oof. Let's talk about the play you're doing now.
Very exciting.
Yes. What is it called?
It's called Paradise. Yes.
And it's in LA.
It's in LA at the Odyssey Theater, and it's having a small commercial production. So it's produced by Viola Davis, Julius Tenen, that's Juvie Productions, and then John Capetta.
Wow.
Yes. And
All right, tell us about the play.
so the play is about a young Yemeni American devout Muslim woman who discovers that she is just wild about science. But she did not have any training in it. They tend to emphasize English and math in the public schools, and so her science training was awful. And then all of a sudden she comes into this classroom where there's this teacher who just explodes her mind with the beauty of the structure of things. And this scientist comes from Columbia University, and he's in this inner city school in the Bronx. It's a horrible school. It has a D rating. She does a lot of learning, and she teaches herself a lot of the classes because a lot of her teachers are not very good. And so she has this, he's like so passionate about science, but he hates the students because he used to teach at Columbia.
How did he even get there?
Well, that's a surprise.
Okay.
But the students feel that it must be something he must have messed up, because why would he be with them?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like he's in prison. He must have done something very bad.
Exactly. And he's a former evangelical that has rejected his Christianity, and she is a devout Muslim American. So he doesn't like religion, period. And then he comes with all the baggage that a lot of Americans come with.
Well, there's an
in terms of
interesting
Islam.
conflict.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they form a mentorship relationship, and they have to deal with a lot of stuff that they're bringing to each other. And his specialty is the science of romantic love. That's what he is known for. That's where he's had his publications. So he's teaching inquiry-based learning. So everything is through the lens of the brain, science, evolution, and love. And so as a teenage girl, she wants to know everything about love.
Yeah.
So his field has a lot of resonance for her. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, now I'm worried that they're going to have an inappropriate relationship.
Well, you cannot write about the science of love and not tell a love story.
Yeah.
But I will let you decide as to its appropriateness or not.
Okay, we'll go see it.
Yes.
What day does it open?
So we have previews this Thursday, the 24th and 25th, and it opens on the 26th. Then there's a matinee on the 27th, and then it runs, through late mid-February.
Okay, so there's a chance. We'll get this out so people can go get tickets. And how do we get tickets?
You can go to the Odyssey website, and there you can order.
Okay, and I will link to it on the website so people can click through and buy tickets. I'm going. I can't wait.
Oh, me too.
Do you want to talk about the lead actress a little bit?
Yes.
I know she's an up-and-coming star.
Her name is Medallion Rahimi. And yes, she is very much an up-and-coming star. And she is Iranian American, and her family background is Muslim. So it's great to have someone, Iranians are Persian, so it's not Arab American. But it is still great to have someone whose cultural background matches the religion of my student.
How wonderful.
Piece. Yes. And she's just really beautiful and alive and full of joy, which is what this character is.
That's great. I can't wait. Okay, so everybody go see it.
And Jeff Marlowe is my other actor in it.
Yes, let's talk
so
about
Jeff
him too.
Marlowe is the other actor in it, the male actor, and he plays the former Southern evangelical, the former Columbia professor. He's got a great... I love kind of a black sense of humor. That's my family's sense of humor. We lived through World War II, my family, so you tend to acquire that. You either become depressives or you acquire a black sense of humor.
Yeah.
And so that character has that, and Jeff is just wonderful, funny, as well as there's a lot of depth. I mean, there's one of the things about his character is he was a scientist. He was revered. What happens in life if you lose that thing that you have given up everything for, that you have sacrificed everything for? And I think so many of us can relate to that because we have, whether it's our children, whether it's our careers, whether it's a person, we have sacrificed, and then what if you lose that?
Yeah.
And that is where he is right now. So
he's having a real identity midlife crisis?
Yes, I think it would be way more than a midlife crisis. Yeah, he has lost it all.
Wow.
Yeah. And these two people change each other's lives.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Because she has a secret too. I mean, she's carrying something with her that she can't reveal at first.
How do you find it different writing for the stage and writing for television?
Well, TV is somebody else's work generally and their framework, and you try to match their voice. And you get really you're like, wow, I did it. I matched their voice. And you're so excited about that.
Right. 'Cause that's a whole different exercise than creating your own work. That's more acting almost.
Yes. And you're trying to match their voice without being a hack. So in other words, you're still trying to access your own emotions and your own life to bring truthfulness to it. But then in a play, you're trying to completely have your own voice. And what I've found as I've gotten older is I don't even know when I've written something that has my voice, because now it's so much me. So like I'll write something and think, well, it's just me. How boring. I'm a little sick of me. And then you realize, oh, well, somebody really appreciates that because you do have a distinctive way of looking at the world.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, but you're so inside your own way of looking at the world.
You think, oh, this is just normal, whatever.
Yeah.
And everyone else is like, oh, brilliant perspective. I hadn't thought about it that way. First of all, where do you teach?
I teach at it keeps changing its name. So it's at the New School, which is this beautiful university in downtown New York, which is devoted to activism, formed by former Holocaust survivors to educate people who hadn't had a chance to become educated, and now is a full-blown university. And I teach in the School of the Arts, the drama division.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, but sometimes for short, I just say the New School for Drama.
Yeah, because was it a full university 30 years ago?
Well, it was, but it didn't have as high a profile. I mean, we've always had the divisions, Milano, which is, political science, just in the social science division. So very renowned divisions, but it started acquiring, so it acquired Parsons, it acquired Mannes School of Music.
Oh.
The drama division came in from the outside, and it has, for undergraduates, it has Eugene Lang, which has incredible professors, real activists, particularly in the arts, art activists. And so the whole school's devoted to kind of a globalism and activism.
Oh, wonderful.
The young undergraduates that come into the school there, or the ones I've been lucky enough to teach, let me put it that way, they have so much going on in their minds as well as in their art, and they're very self-directed. So our undergraduate program is for people that want to produce their own work and want to learn how to produce their own work, who are very self-directed at the same time that they'll get a lot of guidance. But it's not like you just wait for audition for a production. No, there's all these opportunities for you to create.
They have things to say.
Yes, and for you to create plays that you want to do, whether you pick an extant play and direct it, or whether you write a play and put it up, or whether you direct a play that someone else in the program has written.
That's wonderful. So working with these young people, does that give you hope for our future? Are you reassured by the young people that you're seeing?
I am. One thing I'm starting to see in writing that you don't see in older people is they are they're really aware of global warming. And they're starting to write plays that are about that. And you would think, oh gosh, how do you write a play about global warming? Isn't that going to make it very dull?
Yeah.
And no, they find real ways to make it active and exciting. And you don't see that in my generation so much.
All right, that's exciting. All right, what do you make of kind of women in this moment in history, in the country, in this business?
I'm so proud. It's so exciting. Yeah. I'm thinking in terms of Hollywood and all these women-generated projects now, and all these actresses who are taking the reins and looking for projects by women, about women, and projects that push the envelope in terms of what's accepted. I think that's so beautiful and so exciting. I love that restaurant workers are fighting back now, women restaurant workers. I think there's a ways to go in a lot of other professions where it's really, really scary to speak
jazz.
up. Yeah, that's it. Jazz is so hard because they don't they're not organized. Yeah. Yes, so I think it's happening for some women. It's still not happening for other women. I grew up in a working class neighborhood during second wave feminism, and we could watch second wave feminism on TV and go, wow, women can really do things. But that wasn't happening in my neighborhood, or it was in very tiny baby steps. So hopefully this resonance of what the luckier people are able to do is helping other people take smaller steps for women.
And to be able to see what's possible.
Yes.
Although it does, when you talk about second wave feminism, I remember, and I mention this all the time, listening to Free to Be You and Me and seeing that and thinking, oh, we're done, anything is possible. And then getting out there and being the only woman in the room many times. And yet this feels different. Does it feel different to you? And what do you think that is?
It does, but I can't say where it's going to go. But I think once you get women's stories out there, that's powerful. That's how we know each other. So I think that is, and they're being told by women, a lot of them. Although, if you look at this year's nominated screenplays, and a lot of the projects that came out this year were not written by women, and a lot of them had female protagonists. And I'm definitely not one that says you must, there must be a one-to-one correspondence between what you write and who you are, or I never would have written Paradise. But yes, but I do think when we understand each other's stories, there's a level of empathy that can come, that can change hearts as much as politics and the law. Although the law is a pretty fierce weapon, thinking of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah. Let's not ignore the law.
Yeah, let's not ignore the law.
Oh, she's amazing. Did you watch the documentary?
I did the documentary and then the feature film too. Love them both.
Amazing. I had no idea what a force she is.
Yes, for women's rights. Yes.
Forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we go back for a minute? You said, I don't remember how you said it, but the one-on-one, like the thought that women have to write their own stories. I hear this a lot. Like, we seem to be expecting women to spill their guts to get into the arena. Why can't women just write stories?
Yes. Yeah. I haven't found that we have to spill our guts, but this isn't exactly what you're saying in terms of what you asked, but just to let you know, in theater right now, only 22% of new plays produced are by women. And we are 51% of the Dramatists Guild. Women's plays that feature female protagonists have won, in like the last 25 years, have won the most Pulitzer Prizes and have done best at the box office. So I guess what I was saying is there's a little bit of a disconnect between understanding that women have these stories that everyone can empathize with, and also getting a woman writer to write it. And I get it. Everybody in this business, you want to work with people you've worked with before because it's so fraught, you're so stressed, there's never enough money, there's never enough time.
It's hard enough.
Yeah. So when it's people you don't know, but then if you're only working with people you know, then you tend to be in this terrible bubble with lack of diversity.
Yeah, it's a challenge. What advice do you have for young women just coming up?
I don't know that I have any advice because they are a force to be reckoned with. And like me, and based on what you just said, they feel that anything is possible. Yeah. And you should feel that way. And I teach 2 courses at the New School on women playwrights. The second one is writing the female protagonist. The first one is just called Contemporary Women Playwrights. And I do show them that there has been this glass ceiling, and we look at gender parity and in the arts, and there isn't that. And then we look at gender parity in all kinds of fields beyond the arts. And so they are aware, but they are fierce and fighting, and they're also, a lot of them, non-binary. So they have these identities that are both men and women at the same time, which is, just very different. Yeah.
So they're just not having it.
Well, they're fierce. And I was fierce at that age too. I mean, I also didn't realize at the time that interest in you kind of wanes after you're like 33 or something, But I'm hoping that isn't going to be the case for them. Yeah. I'm hoping, I know now in the arts, which is the area I follow the most, that opportunities are opening for women in a way that they never have before, never. So they're going to get the training. It's that training that you need. You get the opportunities and then your skill set goes up. Yeah. And it seems like they're going to get that. So I do think they're going to jump into the managerial and the producing fields.
And have longer careers. Let's hope so.
Yes.
Are there a lot of young men in these courses?
Well, writing the female protagonist is a bunch this semester, which is good. They're small courses anyway. Contemporary Women Playwrights the last 3 years has been all women, but prior to that it was a mix of men and women. And I think the men are coming back because they've gotten to know me outside of that class, and they're like, oh, I just want to study with her. So
nice.
Whatever it is, I'll come. And then little do they know
So subversive. What is next for you?
So I'm so excited. I'm writing the screenplay for Paradise. So
Yay.
my director on the project is Vicangelo Bullock, and he is also one of the producers, and he also runs American Oasis Films. So he has hired me to write the screenplay for it, which
Wonderful.
I'm thrilled with, and we hope it will get produced. And then I'm also working on a play. I had to put it down to write the screenplay for Paradise, but I was in the middle of the second draft about the scientist, Dr. Irene Pepperberg. She had the parrot Alex. If you watch, there's a wonderful Neil deGrasse Tyson YouTube video on her and Alex. And Alex was a parrot that she trained in meaningful communication for 30 years. And then he tragically died. And she gave up everything in her life to train this parrot. And she's taken very seriously in understanding the avian brain. It's not so much about she wanted to teach it to talk. She wanted to learn what the brain was capable of in a bird and what cognitive capacities do they have. So she devised all these incredible experiments to find out, can it compare and contrast? Can it count? Can it do addition? And
Could it?
Yes, yes, and yes.
And could it communicate in ways other than just parroting back what she said?
Oh, yes, the meaningful communication, yeah. So she taught it over 200 labels, and then the bird was able to combine these labels in different ways and then answer these incredible questions. It had the concept of zero,
Amazing.
Yes.
How do we not all know this already?
Yes, well, a lot of people do. She had a best-selling book called Alex and Me. So I'm so excited to bring it to the stage, and I have an experimental circus performer playing the part of Alex.
Oh, very cool. Do you have plans to put that up?
It is also commissioned, just like Paradise was, by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation and Ensemble Studio Theater in New York. So what they do is they help you develop the play, and you're guaranteed a reading.
Oh, wonderful.
If all that goes well, they either produce it or they recommend it. So Paradise, for example, was recommended Ensemble didn't produce it, but they recommended it to a theater in Boston called Underground Railway, which is where it had its premiere. And that's where my producer, Vicangelo Bullock, he came to see that show, and so they helped the development of the project.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
So you have a million projects.
I don't have
happening.
a million. No, I have others that I also would love to work on, but I'm so excited about these two. And right now, Paradise is my priority, the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. What have I not asked you about that I should have asked you about?
Well, one thing about Paradise is that it is about the what do we owe ourselves as an individual, and what do we owe our community. And my mother's side came from Italy, and my mom came from Italy. My dad's side came from Italy too, but he was born here. But she was born in Italy, came as a teenager, and so I grew up mostly in Queens, born in Brooklyn, but grew up mostly in Queens, among a zillion Italian relatives. And they sacrificed for us. As I said, my grandmother worked 3 jobs. My father worked like a dog. And what do I owe them versus what do I owe myself? And that conflict is in this play, both for the young girl and for the scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really important to me. And I find that happens in most of my work. And then another theme that's really important to me is a woman's growth into consciousness. And I think that's what happens to Yasmin, the character of Yasmin in my play. And that's what happens in the play about the parrot, which is called Beyond Words. Same thing, this young scientist growing into consciousness.
That's fascinating. And it seems very young for that to happen. I mean, in my experience, I was 45.
Right?
So it's interesting to see that happen, or to contemplate that happening so young. And then what a formidable force if all women could be conscious and awake by 18.
Yes,
what would the world look like?
Right, right. And Yasmin is carrying a lot of weight on her shoulder, way more weight than a young person should carry. And I find that was very truthful to I taught in the New York City public schools for 9 years as an artist in residence before I started teaching at the university. And I just found these children were carrying loads of problems that most adults couldn't handle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, what else?
Well, there's a secret in the play, and I can't reveal it, and I want to reveal it.
Give us the tease.
So there's a secret in the play, and it has to do with Yasmin's love life. And one of the reasons I was so interested in, well, there's two. One is, who isn't interested in figuring out love? And if something can help you do that, like science, all right, that's a great thing. Because, you have the love poets to go to when you need some advice. I mean, when you break up with somebody, reading Shakespeare's sonnets, I mean, that's going to help you. But in terms of a manual of maybe what to do, science now is really helping to understand what love is. So that was so exciting to me, and that's in the play, and Yasmin is at the age where she's asking questions about what love is, and what is romantic love, and does it last? Because she's being told that it doesn't. And actually, when I was young, I was told, don't expect it to last beyond 2 years. I was told that as a teenager, so.
Really?
Yeah.
Were your parents still together?
Yes.
Oh, that's curious.
Yes. I won't say more to keep from incriminating anybody, but so
There's a story there.
So I was told that, and so I guess I was on that quest. Can love last?
Yeah.
And then, so that's part of Yasmin's, but there's also a secret related to love that I can't reveal, but that secret is very much in my own life as well. My grandparents had a similar story to Yasmin's, although a very different outcome. So I'll leave it there in terms of love, in terms of daring for love and all kinds of things. Yeah.
It's interesting. Also, it made me think of, there are people doing all sorts of complicated algorithms now with their dating apps, figuring out the algorithm outside the dating app so that they can program it into their dating app to have better matches.
Oh, yes?
Which all seems very like...
They do it themselves? They figure out the algorithm?
I wish I knew what I was. I wish I knew what I was talking about. I've heard interviews of people who maybe they do it within the app, but set the algorithm up in such a way that they're really doing scientific matching, and they're like, why isn't everybody doing it this way? Like, it doesn't have to be as random as you think it is. Like, they're really studying it and doing the math on it somehow to get better matches.
Well, there is this is actually mentioned in the play, but there is a website called chemistry.com. And I call it something else in the play, but it's based on the neurotransmitter, the dominant neurotransmitter you have in your brain. And we are all a mixture of things, but you can have a dominant one, and that's going to give you a certain kind of personality profile. And they have found that people with a dominant dopamine look for people, and that's a very risk taker person, looks for another risk taker. People with dominant serotonin, and those kind of people are kind of steady, pillars of the community. They also look for people with a dominant serotonin. But people who are dominant estrogen, and you don't have to be a woman to be dominant estrogen, tend to look for people who have testosterone dominance.
Oh, interesting.
So that saying like attracts like is both true, and opposites attract is true. So this website, you can take, I think, a blood test to find out what your dominant neurotransmitter is. But what they did is they devised questionnaires, because not everyone can take a blood test before they go on this site. And so they devised questionnaires to find out what your dominant neurotransmitter might be.
So interesting. And is that all in the play?
I don't have time to explain all that in the play.
We'd be like, what?
Let me stop for a science lesson. Yes, but it's very casually mentioned in the. Well, it's more than casual. There's something around it.
Yeah. So interesting.
But I couldn't explain how it works. Yeah.
Okay.
I think maybe one other thing that I want to say is my director on the show, Vic Angela Bullock, is someone who has been a force to be reckoned with in the Hollywood community in terms of fighting for diversity. He also produced the last Democratic National Convention, which was amazing, right?
Yeah.
And he has been a fighter for this play, because trying to get a play that stars, that has a character who is Muslim American as the star, as a fully developed character, you would think that would people would be interested in that, and they are, but they're sometimes maybe are not going to put the money behind it, and that he has fought tirelessly for this project for the past 2 years. I had 3 productions out east. He came to every production, was such a supporter, and has been talking it up here and trying to get this story told.
Wonderful. Well, we'll get the word out as much as we can.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was great.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, A Herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Laura Maria Censabella for sharing her story. And special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on your favorite podcast provider and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out in letters, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can also follow us on all the social media platforms. And also, go subscribe to the Kiss My Age show. Thanks for listening.